Welcome to the Good Stuff Family Podcast. I'm Dawn Kendrick, and I am so glad you're here. This is the place you're going to find genuine inspiration in authentic, vulnerable stories that are distinctly different than anything you'll see in mainstream media. The story that binds all of these together, it's my own testimony. A candid, transparent story of my own journey. Holy shifts, grit, grind, divine design. Stories from a former news reporter with a renewed purpose. Welcome to the family. Good morning, Good Stuff family. Welcome to our now chapter 10 we're in already on our author series with Colleen Murphy and their book, Murphys Don't Quit. I would highly urge you to check out the YouTube page for the previous. We have her read a chapter each time we come together so that you can hear and her actual words. And this book, if this is the first one you're watching, I'll say it again. I was so impressed at the writing style of this mama through a traumatic brain injury that her daughter Lauren had, the way she so elegantly mixes humor with guttural. Is that even a word? The journey that they're on as you're reading it, when we say, really, God, really? But then the humor and the bottom line is that this is a survivor story. And she is a way of reaching people right where they are, myself included. So to that end, Colleen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did you have a good week?
I did. I had to buy a new car, so that wasn't fun, but yeah.
Did you have any speaking engagements?
No.
Okay. No. Because I know you've had quite a few lately, and the spoiler alert is that, Lauren, who had this car, it was a car accident that changed all of your lives forever. This was what she had to go through. And the speaking engagements that you all are doing now are, here it is. This wasn't guaranteed. Okay, so let's just do that again. Then, now. So if pictures are worth 1,000 words, that speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. And she's still doing therapy, so it's not.
Mine now is not looking too good this morning.
Your what?
Mine now is not looking too sharp this morning with no makeup.
That's the thing about these. I don't have any on either. And that's the thing about these interviews that we do. The beauty of you is that you're real and genuine. Yeah. And we say the stories are real, raw, genuine, and vulnerable. Sometimes so am I. And so is the production sometimes, but the message is good. It's good. And that when we say together we can, a lot of times it's just sharing our own stories like you've done. Do you feel like that? Like you've had people reach out and tell you that they've learned? Tell me more about that.
For sure. So I think my biggest takeaway, so many people, my proudest is that so many people say that they'd left the church and they've come back after hearing Lauren's story, because I'm not a preachy person. And, I can say, I try to lead by example, but I also feel like my example is not perfect. It's very, very flawed. So I have strong faith, but I don't do witness a lot. I just do me. And I think just from the story, many people, their faith is restored. And I think everybody on their faith journey, we go through, highs and lows. But I think that's my proudest takeaway is that, that it has brought people back to faith. Now, my real takeaway is, why did I have to be the instrument for that? I was already there. But we don't get to choose our tragedies, do we?
And there, you just spoke for every person when we say, come on, God, I was doing great. I was praising you. I went to church. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I think of when you say that is Paul, who wrote all those books in the Bible. Like Paul, he had every reason to be like, really, God? And he said, I count it all for good. That's it. I count it all for good. If I'm hungry, great. If I'm full, great. And the Christians, like of that day, we rallied around them and the disciples as well. And somehow they were cared for. So I think it comes in our testimony that becomes the gift that we can share. So to that end, perfect 10 for you, in my opinion. Do you think of it as a ministry at all or no?
I mean,
That's
sometimes. It's
yeah,
still I mean, we're still trudging through, so it's still I'd be
yeah,
lying if I said it wasn't hard, you know? But,
yeah, yeah,
um, yes and no, but I don't, you know, we roll with the punches no matter what life gives us, and we try to find the positive. But, but yeah, no, and I do, you know, so many people that have traumatic brain injuries, you know, I get so many emails from people that know our story, that know someone else that's had something tragic, and they reach out to us for advice, which I'm honored. You know, obviously I don't give out medical advice, but I do always share our story. And the fact that I can give people hope in their, you know, most desperate hour is is not lost on me, and that I am grateful that I can do that.
yeah. And we're at chapter 10. I love the title. It's finally, we've been doing this journey to just can we just get her home? Can we just get her
Mhm.
home? So do you want to kind of set up, if you can, kind of condense what got us to chapter 10, and then we'll start reading chapter
Sure.
10.
So the accident happened in April. We spent 5 or 6 weeks in Cedar Sinai Hospital in Beverly Hills, and we were medically airlifted to Chicago for her rehab portion. And this is 127 days after the accident is when we finally touched down in our driveway.
And that was huge. That was when you saw all those people who showed up.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I almost
Mind
got out of the
blowing.
car and kissed the concrete like the Pope when he gets off of a plane, but I thought, I don't know if people know my humor, so I decided not to do that for my fans.
What is wrong with her? She's lost it. She's finally lost it. Look at her on the floor.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was the beginning of what you couldn't even have anticipated.
No,
That there's
no,
so
and even
many
at that point, we
stories.
had no idea what her recovery was going to look like. I mean, we were still I mean, she was upright, you know, and she could take a few steps, but she wasn't steady, and cognitively, you know, lights were on, but nobody was home, so we had no clue what the future would bring.
And there are so many stories within your story, and one of them, the powerful stories, one of those powerful stories is that people rose up, people, total strangers,
Mhm.
celebrities, even, I still have, that vision of Taylor Swift rising. I
Mhm.
mean, the people and, Rick Springfield, your
Yeah,
childhood
that's
love,
even
like,
bigger than Taylor Swift, come on.
says the self-appointed president of his fan club.
Of course, yeah.
For this, until then, Laura Murphy was beloved at Incarnate Word Academy and in her circles,
Mhm,
but all of a sudden, your struggle
mhm.
became an example for so many people who you'll never even meet, a lot of them, but they showed
Yeah,
up
for
to
sure.
rally for her coming home, and it's been your message now, like giving it, is all the speaking engagements and stuff. It's a story that you didn't script it, you wouldn't have scripted it, but you're killing it in the message.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's been good, and it gives Lauren a sense of purpose, which is, you know, why we started this to begin with, which, you know, the fact that we can, you know, touch people along the way and maybe change a life or 2 is an added bonus.
There it is. So, you wanna read
Sure.
us, chapter 10? Chapter 10, yeah.
Chapter 10. Alrighty. Home sweet home. The drive home from Chicago was fairly uneventful. We stopped at a gas station before we hit St. Louis to change Lauren out of the ugly blue and orange Chicago Bears t shirt. She would be coming home in a St. Louis Cardinals t shirt and a little black running skirt. Our ride home wouldn't be considered uneventful by most standards, but because I'm a Murphy, I'm used to things not going as planned. Murphy's Law states anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Since I've been married to Dave, I can pretty much agree with the authentic nature of Murphy's Law. None of this crazy stuff happened before he swept me off my feet with his boyish charm, taped together glasses, and bright blue 1978 Camaro with a broken door handle. If that alone didn't impress me, the Budweiser bottle caps he attached to his car stereo knobs pretty much sealed the deal. I reeled in quite the catch. We were about an hour outside Chicago when I realized the discharge nurse forgot to give me a syringe to administer Lauren's medicine. I had the pill crusher, bottle of water, and plastic cup, but no syringe, and I needed a specific type of syringe that fit in her feeding tube. We stopped in a small town Walmart. Dave went in to talk to the pharmacist, who didn't have anything like that in stock, but recommended a small pharmacy on the other side of town. Dave drove to the pharmacy, went in to ask, then came back to the car and asked me to go inside and talk to them. They didn't have the type I needed, but they had something similar that could possibly work. The only problem was that we had to buy the whole box. I didn't care what it cost. I only had about an hour to either teach her how to swallow pills or find a syringe. $150 later, we were back on the road with a box of 200 plastic syringes. I sat in the back seat with Lauren on the ride home, recalling when I rode in the back seat next to her when she was a baby coming home for the first time from the hospital. Her little head kept falling forward in the rear-facing car seat. I was worried it would hurt her neck, so I held my hand on her forehead the whole way home to keep her upright. I now would often think of Lauren's recovery like pregnancy and childhood. Her first trimester was similar to her early ICU days. Her second trimester was when she emerged from her coma and began to focus. The third trimester was her getting stronger for the move to Chicago. The time at RIC was a rebirth for Lauren. She had to relearn everything like she did as an infant. I tried to look at the positive. I was falling in love with her all over again. How many mothers get to raise their children twice? I received a do-over. One thing I knew for sure was that I would teach her a strong appreciation for Rick Springfield. The old Lauren never gave him the respect that he so obviously deserved. I had been texting with the kids during the drive home, so they knew when to expect us. 5 minutes from our house, I noticed a huge banner on the highway overpass that read, Murphy Strong. My heart was full. My daughter Kelsey hung the Murphy Strong banner. To describe her in one word, I would have to say, extra. She is the type of kid that goes all in on everything that she does. Unfortunately, her huge heart does not line up with her tiny bank account. She sees a need and she jumps right in to help, whether it be volunteering for 25 committees at school or just collecting money to help people in times of crisis. Her heart is always open. I am proud of how hard she works to help others. But what I don't like is that when she comes up short on donations, she gets the rest of the money from me. I didn't realize what a great humanitarian I was until Kelsey began trying to save the world. She isn't afraid to get out there and be bold. She's a lot like Lauren in that aspect. Kelsey took charge of arranging Lauren's homecoming party. We had to be careful not to overstimulate Lauren upon arriving home, but also wanted to mark this occasion with something special. So many people had followed our story and sent prayers, gifts, food, and love that we wanted to share this moment with them. I firmly believe that all of their prayers and support helped get us to where we were. The original plan was to have a few friends and neighbors outside cheering us on as Lauren arrived home. I should have known that Kelsey, along with the rest of the Murphy kids, would turn it into something completely over the top. Kelsey and Maggie went to every single house in the neighborhood and put flyers in mailboxes, and Sam had posted the homecoming information on Lauren's Caring Bridge site. I knew we would have a good-sized crowd, but I never could have imagined how big it truly was. When we pulled down our street, I couldn't believe my eyes. Both sides of the street were lined with over 200 people, neighbors, sports teams, friends, and family. A fire truck was parked out front with a huge Murphy's Don't Quit sign covering the whole left side, directly under the big ladder. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined so much love when we came home. Oh, I didn't realize this was in the book. I briefly considered getting out of the car, getting on my hands and knees, and kissing the driveway like the Pope when he gets off an airplane. I was that happy to be home. Everyone gathered around for a quick picture. As we stood for a tight group photo, Lauren recognized Vicky, one of our neighbors from our previous neighborhood. When Lauren was younger, she would dog sit for Vicky, who always stocked her fridge with orange juice just for Lauren. That was their little inside joke. When Lauren saw Vicky, her whole face lit up. I immediately started crying. To see her recognize someone she didn't see on a regular basis, someone from her childhood, was huge. We took our group picture and headed inside. I left the wheelchair in the back of the car. It was important for me to have her walk, not be wheeled through the front door. Later that evening, Lauren was lying in bed, surrounded by all of her siblings. I'm happy, Lauren softly said. We all pretty much melted upon hearing her words. And her words were not a whisper, they were audible, real words. Her voice was softer and a little scratchy, but it was still her voice. Many times I wondered if I would ever hear her voice again. Nothing could have possibly sounded any sweeter at that exact moment than those two words. Erin came home from college for Lauren's homecoming and was headed back to Alabama the next evening. She agreed to sleep on the couch next to Lauren's hospital bed that first night. I was happy to take her up on her offer, as I had only slept in my bed one night in the last 4 months. The next morning, Erin woke up to the sound of our front window blinds shaking. She looked up and Lauren was standing at the window looking outside. I could only assume that Lauren woke up confused as to where she was. I could also assume that Erin was now fired from keeping watch. Lauren was still not real steady on her feet and couldn't walk without someone being right next to her. Her hospital bed came equipped with an alarm that would sound if she got out of bed, but we didn't set the alarm that first night, thinking if someone was with her, they would hear her waking up. This was one of her many silent ninja type escapades yet to come. While we were still at RIC, I set up Lauren's outpatient therapy in St. Louis to begin the Monday after we arrived home. I wanted her to get right to work to keep the momentum going. The kids had all started school the week before, so our mornings were back to the crazy chaos of looking for matching socks. We still never had enough socks. Packing lunches, grabbing a Pop Tart, and heading out the door. I remember thinking, this really sucks. Why did I miss this? I got Lauren's stuff ready for therapy the night before. Our morning routine included, of course, hair and makeup, along with crushing her pills, mixing them with water, and giving them to her with a syringe via her feeding tube. I also had to allow enough time for her morning tube feed. I made sure I packed enough diapers, wipes. She had been doing well in the toilet, but I wanted to be prepared, and afternoon meds, plus bags of tube feeding to last throughout the day. I felt like I was packing her diaper bag for the babysitter all over again. I was never this organized when my kids were little. By the time I got to my fourth or fifth kid, I never even bothered packing a diaper bag. I spent the majority of my time away from home at a sports practice or game. Organized diaper bags were no longer on my radar. When I needed it, there was usually an extra diaper under the seat of our van. Lauren's new therapy facility was 35 miles away. I was hoping to be a little early, as I wasn't sure how much traffic we would encounter. Since I drove a little Honda Accord, Lauren's wheelchair had to be taken apart to fit in the trunk. Thankfully, she no longer had the hot pink lime green combo. In its place, she had a custom-made powder blue, lightweight, spiffy new wheelchair. That morning, I got in my car ready to start the next leg of Lauren's recovery. It felt good to get behind the wheel of a car again. I had not driven a car since we left Los Angeles, and I hadn't driven my car since the day I got that awful phone call that changed everything. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway. A few yards down the road, I glanced at my gas gauge. The light was on, and it showed 2 miles to empty. This was the exact moment that my head spun all the way around, and I began to spew green vomit like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. I dialed Kelsey's phone number. Turns out Kelsey had been too busy driving all over town, hanging Murphy Strong banners and dropping off flyers, she failed to fill up my tank on her way home. This was more proof that Dave and I should have stopped having kids at the national average of 2.2 instead of 7.0. After some quick Google research, I found out that in the year 2013, the average number of children per family had dropped down to 1.8. Who knew? That just made us even more stupid than I had originally thought. After 10 Hail Marys, I miraculously made it to the gas station without running out of gas. I filled up my tank and merged onto the highway. 30 seconds later, Lauren was covered in vomit. And not the imaginary exorcist vomit, but the real life soaked through her clothes all down the side of my car kind. I turned around at the next exit, called to let the facility know we would be late, and headed home for dry clothes. An hour later, we were signing in at the front desk for therapy. Before Lauren and I started therapy that morning, we met with the director of the program, who asked Lauren what college she attended. I was waiting for her typical response of, "Good morning." Instead, she said, "Bachelor of Science, Fashion Merchandising." I almost fell over. Even though it was the wrong answer, she was on the right track. 2 days earlier, she was whispering pleasantries, and now she was saying real words. Her new speech therapist was great. She explained to me that what it had to be like for Lauren. She used the analogy of a hurricane coming through a library. Shelves knocked over, books scattered on the floor, some books rain-soaked and damaged, others okay, but in the wrong section. She explained that for Lauren, learning to speak again is similar to that hurricane. She needs to start working on sorting through the rubble, one day at a time. Later that evening, I shared the story of the hurricane analogy along with the rest of Lauren's therapy highlights with my brother-in-law, Jim. "She's on the right chapter," he said. "She just has the wrong page." He was so right, and I was once again hopeful for a future that included Lauren possibly speaking again. I knew coming home would be wonderful, but it also presented many new challenges. Lauren's beauty regimen didn't stop now that we were home. Each week I painted her nails and kept her eyebrows perfectly plucked. I wanted her to feel as much like the old Lauren as possible. Showering Lauren in our house was a big challenge. I was anxiously waiting for her handicap shower to be installed. In the meantime, I had to awkwardly stand outside the shower with Lauren, either sitting in a shower chair or standing while I held her up with my right hand, my strongest arm, and used my left hand to wash her skin and hair or shave her legs and armpits. If that wasn't challenge enough, with the shower door open, water sprayed all over me. Once I finished, I would get her dressed while my own clothes were soaked. Thankfully, construction on the newly equipped bathroom was scheduled to start soon. But first, we had to select tile and paint and flooring and fixtures. Choosing finishes was actually a nice distraction, as taking care of Lauren full time was hard work, mentally as well as physically. A week or so after Lauren's homecoming, Dave and I went to look at tile. When we got home that evening, Lauren was in her pajamas ready for bed. I laid down with her for a while, and then I too went to bed exhausted. The next morning, as I was getting Lauren's medication ready, I realized I forgot her evening medication the night before. Lauren was eating breakfast as I gave her the belated medicine through her feeding tube. She had just taken a bite of banana when I saw her eyes begin to twitch. I knew what was about to happen and that it was entirely my fault. How could I have forgotten her medicine? Was bathroom tile that important? Immediately, I reached into her mouth to remove any banana. I held onto her with one hand and dialed 911 with the other. She started to violently shake. All I could do was hold her in place and pray with all my heart that the seizure would soon stop. They normally last less than 5 minutes, but to me, every scary minute felt like hours. This seizure thankfully stopped before EMS arrived. After checking her vitals, EMS agreed with me that a trip to the ER was not necessary. They reminded me how important taking medication on time was to prevent seizures. I deserved the scolding. Once again, I felt like the worst mother in the history of the world. I called and canceled her therapy for the day and vowed to be better. I couldn't afford to make mistakes. This was my daughter's life. I had in my hands. Lauren's balance was improving. Although we never let her go upstairs without help, she began walking up in the middle of the night, unplugging her bed and waking up in the middle of the night, unplugging her bed and going upstairs to dig through her boxes of clothes and shoes that had been shipped to our house from New York. One of us, Dave, would wake up at 3 o'clock a.m. and find Lauren dressed in a party dress with heels and fresh lipstick. We bought a baby monitor that detected movement. I would receive a text message on my phone whenever she moved. That would have been a great solution if I wasn't such a heavy sleeper. So many of my friends tell me that once they became mothers, they became super light sleepers. Unfortunately, that was not the case for me. I think motherhood made me so exhausted I became a heavier sleeper. Before Lauren's accident, Kelsey broke her collarbone during a soccer game. The doctor told us the bone was not broken all the way through and that it would not be uncommon for the rest of the bone to snap in the next couple of days. He was preparing us just in case it happened. 2 nights later, Kelsey rolled over in her bed and felt her collarbone crack. Even though she knew this might happen, it scared her and it was painful. She came downstairs to wake me up. Regrettably, when I am in the middle of a good sleep, I am often like a rabid dog if someone tries to interrupt my perfect slumber. That night was no exception. Kelsey was crying and very hard to understand. Mom, I broke my bone. What? I was half asleep and annoyed. I broke my bone, she repeated. Kelsey, I don't care if you broke your phone. It's the middle of the night. Kelsey cried harder. Mom, my bone, Mom, my bone, not the phone. It hurts so bad. That woke me up 100%. Oh no, I suck. I'm sorry, honey. Let's go get you some Advil. It's safe to say I parent much better during regular business hours. Late night emergencies are better left for Dave. Now, sure, my teenagers love that I'm a super heavy sleeper, especially all the nights they are late for curfew, probably hanging at the local Mexican restaurants. Those first few weeks at home, I would wake up to a string of texts from the baby monitor app and wonder what Lauren had been doing all night. One morning, I discovered a cookie sheet on the counter with a dozen piping hot biscuits. Lauren somehow woke up, went into the kitchen, got out a cookie sheet, opened a tube of Pillsbury biscuits, I can never open those, and turned on the oven and cooked them to golden brown perfection without anyone in the house hearing a thing. Lauren also started trying to take her medicine on her own. I think she thought the medicine would help her get better. Although logical, not true. I found her one day drinking her liquid anti-seizure medication right out of the bottle. After that, I bought a locked medication box. Once she realized she couldn't open the box, she would grab a butcher knife to try and pick the lock. We then had to hide all of our knives. We were happy to see Lauren becoming more aware, but with increased awareness came danger. We started to hide our car keys out of fear that she would take the car in the middle of the night. Part of the problem was that Lauren was on so many neurostimulants. Sleeping was hard for her. The other part of the problem was that she had severe brain damage and simple tasks were hard. I had to keep an eye on her nonstop in order to keep her safe. It's no wonder I was exhausted each night. Lauren was speaking more words, but not in a conversational way. She could count up to the early 20s and say all the days of the week. Sometimes she would respond with something that made sense, and other times it was gibberish. For lunch one afternoon, I made her a grilled cheese. After placing it in front of her at the table, she looked disgusted and clear as day said, God help me. The whole family was dying laughing. Lauren was always a healthy eater and worked extremely hard to maintain her petite figure. She was not one of those lucky girls who were naturally thin. She had to work really hard. Lauren would have never ordered French fries at a restaurant. She would lecture us on how unhealthy we ate, as she stole 10 fries right off of our plates. She always believed if it came off someone else's plate, there were no calories. I hoped that my unhealthy cooking choices would lead Lauren to speak more words as she protested her lunch options. Lauren's stubbornness wasn't located only at home. She was beginning to show signs of fatigue and frustration in therapy. Now that she was walking on her own, she would get irritated and walk right out of therapy sessions. Some mornings, I couldn't even get her in the car to go to therapy. I would literally pull her off the couch and push her towards the driveway. She was still only around 100 pounds, but somehow she had superhuman strength. I had a goal of having Lauren's feeding tube removed before Thanksgiving. Lauren's nurse manager for her insurance told me she didn't want me to be disappointed because that was a very aggressive goal. I knew I would enjoy proving her wrong. I had to encourage Lauren to eat real food, and by encourage, I mean force feed her. I put an Ensure bottle in her hand every chance I could get. When Lauren wouldn't show interest in food, when Lauren would show interest in food, I was always really happy. But I soon learned that she was learning how to con me into believing she was actually eating. I would find food in random places around the house. Once I found an old yogurt in my Tiffany gift bag on my dresser. David bought me a necklace from Tiffany and Company on our first trip to New York that March. Nothing crazy expensive, but it was a great memento from our trip. Lauren helped me pick it out and also laid claim on it when I die. The necklace was still fine, but the box and bag that it came in was full of rotten yogurt. I later found a rock-hard ham sandwich in the laundry pile. She must have thrown it down the laundry chute. Finding all this random food, I wondered if maybe I had been a little too aggressive with the feeding tube goal. Nope, Operation Force Feed was still on. Perhaps I was even more determined. Lauren's therapy program was called the Day Treatment Program. There was an hour break for lunch, and all the therapists shared the same lunch hour. We really struggled during that hour. Lauren rarely ate anything they served in the cafeteria, so we relied on her tube feedings. Those feedings trickled through her feeding tube hooked to an IV pole. There was nothing to distract her for that hour, so I had resorted to hiding out in the bathroom together and making funny faces in the mirror and taking selfies. By the time her afternoon session started, she was already pretty much done for the day. Many times we would be released early because she wasn't cooperating. My birthday was one of the most difficult and longest therapy days for me to watch. It was during our third or fourth week in the day treatment program. Lauren worked on icing a cake as part of her OT therapy. She still wasn't using her right hand, and I knew that she didn't really ice the cake. She wasn't capable of icing a cake at this point of her recovery. Basically, she held a spatula while someone moved her arm. After the session, Lauren, along with her OT, walked out to the gym area holding the cake with candles, and they started singing happy birthday to me. All of the patients in the therapy gym stopped to sing. Everyone was off key, and all I could look at was Lauren's now asymmetrical mouth the whole time she tried to sing. I know I should have been thankful for the gesture, but instead I wanted to throw the cake against the wall. This was my worst birthday in the history of birthdays. Swallowing my grief, I thanked her therapist and set the cake down with the rest of our things to bring home and throw away later. During speech therapy that day, Lauren played a Barney the Dinosaur game. She did okay, but I hated that they used a child's game. Couldn't they think outside the box and make one for adults with everyday items? Her last therapy session of the day was a therapist assistant instead of an actual therapist. The assistant tried playing the Barney memory game again, and Lauren wasn't interested, most likely because she had spent the last hour playing the same stupid game. The assistant's alternative plan was saying, okay, instead, why don't you just lay your head down and rest for a while? I was sitting in the room mortified. This was her therapy session? Another therapist in the room working with another patient must have seen the look on my face and intervened. She asked her to try something else instead of resting. Can you tell me your name? The assistant asked Lauren. No response. She asked again. Still no response. The third time she said, you have 5 minutes to tell me your name. I'll wait. I had heard enough. She can't tell you her name. She has aphasia, I said, fighting back my tears. She can't understand you, and she doesn't know her name. We sat in awkward silence for a while, and when the session was over, another therapist suggested I go speak with the director about Lauren's last session. I declined. I knew that I would not be able to speak without becoming a blubbery mess. I gathered my things, including my stupid birthday cake, and we headed out. I cried the whole way home. I hated that Lauren couldn't do something as simple as ice a cake or say her name. I hated brain injuries, and I hated my 44th birthday. Within the first month of being home, Lauren became completely continent and learned to wash her hands and brush her teeth. Brushing her teeth became almost an obsession. She would brush her teeth 10 times a day. Although we were happy she was doing these everyday tasks, we still had a few challenges. She didn't care whose toothbrush she used, and she always spit on the floor. She would also throw her toilet paper on the ground instead of the toilet and only wash her left hand. I didn't complain. Progress was progress. In early September, construction started on our house. The crew began with the wheelchair ramp extension on the side of the deck. It was weird waking up and doing our routine with men right outside our kitchen window. I could no longer roll out of bed as is and pee with the bathroom door open to keep an eye on Lauren. I was extra thankful Lauren had therapy, so we had somewhere to go. Insurance was paying for our remodel, another advantage of work comp, and offered to pay us to be in a rental house during construction. Finding a rental house big enough for our family, including Grandma, wasn't an easy task. One problem was finding a house that would let us sign a short lease. The other obstacle was finding something close to home. I had a huge support system in my neighborhood. I couldn't ask friends who picked up our kids for soccer practice twice a week to drive an extra 20 minutes out of their way. Both Ryan and Maggie played soccer. Life didn't slow down because Lauren had an accident. We ultimately decided to stay in our house during the construction process. Looking back, I don't know if that was the best choice, but I miss being in my own home, my own bed, and more importantly, my own big bathtub. Dave had been back at work for a while, and we were trying hard to make the best of our new life. In October, we celebrated Lauren's 26th birthday. In the morning, one of Lauren's friends picked her up and took her for a manicure. A birthday dinner was planned with her friends later that evening. She seemed genuinely happy, and I felt extremely grateful. 6 months earlier, I never thought she would make it through the weekend, much less celebrate her next birthday. During dinner, Lauren thought her fingernails were still wet. The light directly over their table was bright and made her freshly manicured nails extra shiny. The girls were laughing when they told me how Lauren refused to hold her glass with her fingers. She picked everything up with her palms so she wouldn't mess up her nails. At least the girl still had her priorities straight. Most of Ryan's freshman soccer games were scheduled at 4:00 p.m., right after school. I could have easily brought Lauren in her wheelchair to catch a game or two, as her therapy ended at 3:00 and the highway home ran alongside Ryan's high school. But I didn't. I was afraid that if we showed up, Ryan would be embarrassed of his sister in front of his new friends. Instead, I made the decision to continue to be an absent parent. I wish I would have been stronger and would have asked Ryan how he felt, but I was trying to protect him. I still wonder if I made the right choice. This was not the kind of mother I wanted to be. I was consumed with piecing Lauren back together as best as I could. Lauren was starting to display many quirks and obsessions at home, with hiding food in strange places just the tip of the iceberg. She would go to every closet in the house and start pulling all the clothes off the hangers. She would dig through dresser drawers as if she was desperately searching for something. It was tough to witness. I was at a loss as how to help her. A dangerous new quirk was taking several baths a day. It felt like every time I turned around, I would find her in the bathtub with water running. I had no idea how she could silently sneak past 6 other people in the house, get undressed by herself, and climb in the tub unnoticed. Her sneaky ninja skills left us all baffled. On October 28th, way ahead of schedule, Lauren had her feeding tube removed. This was a huge win, knowing that I was able to beat my goal of removal before Thanksgiving, and gave me a boost to set the bar even higher. Unfortunately, Lauren was becoming more and more difficult in therapy. She was eating real food again, which was good, but what was not good was that during therapy, she would walk out, go to the employee break room, and try to steal people's lunches. This was a daily occurrence. I started packing snacks in case she got hungry, but snacks didn't help. She preferred stealing lunches. To keep her from becoming known as the lunchroom bandit, I had to spend a big part of my day as a human shield standing guard in front of the employee refrigerator. We had many excellent therapists that worked with Lauren in the day program, but there was one who wasn't a good fit. I felt like this particular therapist was at a complete loss as to what to do to motivate Lauren. Perhaps this was part of the problem with Lauren not wanting to go back every day. Week after week, Lauren would make beaded or macaroni necklaces during therapy. This was worse than the Barney memory game. The old Lauren enjoyed a fast paced life in New York City. Was working on macaroni necklaces every week the best way to motivate her? Ultimately, the facility recommended we take a break from therapy for a few weeks due to Lauren's increasingly stubborn bad behavior. I was afraid that Lauren's progress would stop if we took a break. I only wanted her to get better, and I didn't want to wait. Her therapist had helped her so much over the last several months, I hated to leave. But sometimes change is good. But I didn't see how sitting at home all day with the construction crew would be helpful, especially as Lauren's increasingly bad behavior was becoming a real problem. I didn't know how to fix it, but I knew it was up to me to try.
Oh, when I could not get my mouse to work in the middle of that, a picture of Bernie Kosar popped up with Taylor Swift instead you're reading. But it occurs to me, he does a lot of work with traumatic brain injury with athletes. He's been knocked down as a quarterback for the Browns so many times, and that's his second half of his life. Purpose-driven life is working with traumatic, and you both have Taylor Swift in common. That's so weird.
That's funny. Yeah.
It is. And we just did the Bernie story a few days ago, so he's still over here in the library with the pictures. So,
Yeah.
I'm like, was that an accident? I don't know. It just popped up in the mouse. I'm like,
That's
stop.
funny.
Yeah. So, Mama, for you in chapter 10, what's reading it again today? What stood out most, with hindsight being 2020 now? What stood out most to you in that chapter?
I don't know. I think for me reading that, I think that was probably the hardest season of all of this because I felt like everything was on my shoulders at this point. Everything else before that was doctors and therapists. And it was just, I felt like I was stuck in the mud 24/7. That was a hard chapter for me to read.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. It was just, everything about that time was just hard. And dealing with all the rest of the stuff going on with the kids on top of all of that.
Right.
Just was, because Ryan and Maggie were young. I had 2 in grade school and 1 in high school and 2 in college.
And you said that so many times that the rest of your kids needed you, but your focus had to be in fact, the whole family adapts around this purpose,
Yeah.
like you said, the reality is, when the macaroni necklaces and the Barney game, my grandpa had a stroke. Now it's way different. Lauren is young, but when he had a stroke, and I remember the nurse with these blocks, like preschool blocks, saying, the therapist coming to the house,
Yeah.
and he couldn't speak, and she'd say, "Warren!" Well, he wasn't deaf for a starter, and
Yeah, and it's amazing how many medical staff don't get that. They just talk louder. And and that's a normal thing. You see somebody older and you just scream. I've caught myself doing that just because for years of
I
doing
do.
it with my
I do it too.
grandparents and actually now with my husband. But you just find yourself talking louder when it's somebody older.
Yeah, and she'd say, "Warren, where's the blue block?" And that's not the blue. And I thought, he's still the same age person. But so I related to that and as a mama, you're watching the Barney game and the macaroni needle, and you're thinking of how she had this vibrant job and this vibrant life, so that you relate that. I'm sure there are tons of people listening who have been going through the same kind of struggle, bringing someone back from a stroke or a brain injury, who can relate. How about the stealing the lunches? I thought
Yeah.
that. Well, I should probably point out, when we say these are real raw, I'm live at my friend Denise's house in Madison. That's her. We've been friends forever. And they have see the Poochie, the rescue Poochie back there. This home is a happy place because it's full of fur babies. But again, they've had their own struggles and challenges here with her. Her brother Andy had a stroke. D. Look at this. Yes. Like we're talking about traumatic brain injuries with Colleen Murphy. Yeah, it was touch and go the 24 hours after his stroke. We were in the emergency room. They didn't know. Yeah, long-term care facility, couldn't stand. The dude who was in a rock band. Yes. So, it just hits me like a ton of bricks, the similarities there. And we speak candidly here, and just unscripted, because who else is listening to this who is saying, yes, I get it. We hope that you can take encouragement for whatever road you're on if you're dealing with the same kinds of things. But I was saying, when you said she stole lunches from the break room,
Yeah, her
I think that
therapist
was
and I,
me.
we still see each other. We serve on a board together for the Brain Injury Foundation of St. Louis, and we still laugh about it. But her new therapist, they just brought they had a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, and instead of having her steal lunches, they had her make her own.
So
So it's
she
like
could make, see, there you
they
go.
figured
And
it out. Yeah.
yeah, and they flipped the script for her and said, okay,
Mhm.
let's go with this. And at least she was eating, like you said. So
Yeah.
I also love that you talked about, what am I, the worst mother in the history of the world? That you're thinking that people listening to you are thinking that you get a gold star,
Yeah.
but
I'm
you
still mad
actually,
at myself for
what's
that.
that?
I'm still mad at myself that I missed that medicine. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been 11 years, and I still think that's just not acceptable.
But how many other parents beat themselves up for things too? And
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But it's
yeah,
like, everyone misses a dose of amoxicillin when their kid has an ear infection, but this wasn't an ear infection. And, you know, I need to be better.
this was my daughter's life in my hands. You said.
Mhm.
I took a note of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but then you have these breakthrough moments where you make her a grilled cheese and she clearly doesn't want it. Oh, God help me. And I had that highlighted in my book. The whole family
Yeah.
is rolling, laughing. To hear her even complain about a grilled cheese, count that
For
all
sure.
for good, that she
Yeah.
can say, God help me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Safe to say she never got one of those in New York.
Right. Right. Well,
Never
there's so
ordered
much
that.
about that chapter that I love, so much about this book that I love. Anything else you want to add on the heels of chapter 10?
No, I don't think so. That was actually, I think, wasn't that a long chapter? It felt like that was a longer chapter than.
It felt a little
Mm.
longer. I was following it on my phone with screen grabs of it because I don't have the book with me. But again, if you're listening and you're just now joining in, this is a page turner for me. It was a
Mhm.
great book. I would suggest it even makes a great gift. So do you want to tell people where to find it?
Sure. The cheapest place is probably Amazon. They always have sales on it, and it's probably the fastest if you have Prime. You can also get it Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, online. You can, if you want an autographed copy, you can get it through my website. If you know Dawn and she's traveling back and forth and you want an autographed copy, you can get one cheaper. I can do it from here, and then you don't have to pay shipping, and then it doesn't cost extra for the autograph. But I think it's just like one of the options in the drop down. But yeah, so my website we have Self Kindness is free T-shirts, books.
Right.
I don't know what else we have. We have sweatshirts, long sleeve shirts, all that good stuff. But yeah, Amazon's probably the best place to get it if you want it quick and you want it the cheapest.
And people could book you and Lauren for speaking engagements
Oh,
too.
yes, for sure. Yeah, and on
That's
our website, which is murphysdon'tquit.com, there's a contact tab, and you
okay.
can get us through there. That goes directly to my email.
All right. We hadn't shown some of these videos in a while, and I thought I'm going to wrap this up rather than using our usual out video. We used to at the beginning when we started reading this book with you, we were showing, this is Lauren before, but Lauren and her sister in Chicago, a video they sent you before her accident. So there's that. And then in an instant, once she was hit by that car, this is what she had to do.
Good job. Swinging so quick. That was awesome.
Okay, we'll take a quick break.
Doing good. Keep trying with that right hand. So good, Lauren.
Good stretch. She had to work for all the progress that she's made.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
makes me say, whoever else is listening, what do you have to do today? Would you
Mm.
please just do it already?
Yeah,
You
for
know?
sure. Yeah, for sure. And she still has to work, unfortunately. It's constant recovery.
Yeah. Well, I love her and I love you. I love the lessons that you're teaching and how you're leading by example. And we'll be back next week. So you're available next week?
No, we're actually in Charleston for a wedding next week. So,
Okay. We'll take a bye week and catch you on the flip side for chapter 11.
Yeah, sounds
All
good.
right.
All
I
right.
love you. Let's close this out with the ceremony, then set at that commencement speech
Okay.
that y'all had to do. Just set this up, and we'll go out on this instead of our normal outro.
Sure. So when we first started public speaking, I think we'd only done 2 speeches. We were recommended to do commencement address at Fontbonne University. And at this point, I was doing probably 90% of the talking. So somehow I had to figure out how to do a commencement address to where she was more involved, and which was tough because she couldn't read. She can't remember anything. And I mean, we literally did this on a constant reel 24/7. And when we weren't doing it, we were listening to the tape of it. But anyway, she pulled it off, nailed it, and brought 3,000 people to their feet at this commencement address. And that really is what was the start of our actual career, because that's when the requests started flooding in.
Yeah, the message to these graduates who are taking off into the real world to have that kind of inspiration. So thank you again for setting up. We're going to go ahead and roll it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks back here
All right.
for the
Sounds
author
good.
series. Okay, God bless you and safe travels.
Obviously, most of you are not going to have a catastrophic injury to deal with like Lauren has. We hope nobody has a catastrophic injury to deal with. But you will meet some roadblocks and some detours. And we hope that you remember this day and remember these lessons that Lauren shared with you might make that road just a little bit smoother. So Lauren, can we recap?
Of course. Number 1, show up. 2, find your cheerleader. 3, kindness is free. 4, work hard. 5, never give up. You got this, class of 2019. You got this. Thank you.